I think we're live. Welcome, guys, to the fourth webinar. Ooh,
Yes.
exciting today. Hello, Yakim. Hello. Who have we got here today? Nari. Hello. We've got William.
Grüezi.
Good.
Testa.
Yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic.
Beautiful. So, for this evening's webinar, I'm going to get Yakim. I'm going to pay him back interviewing and start digging into his brain a little bit. So I get to relax a little bit more today and put him under the spotlight. So if you guys have got any questions, you don't get a choice in the matter, by the way. If you guys have got any questions, then feel free to chime in and ask as we go along, okay?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay.
Brilliant. So Yakim, how you doing?
I'm great, thank you. And you? How are you, Sam?
I'm enjoying your haircut.
Yes, I got a haircut.
Kind of hairs. Now mine's longer and yours is shorter.
Yes, it was time. It got in the way. It was quite hot, and I was like, oh man, I need to get a haircut.
So you changed your haircut. That's one thing you've changed about yourself. What are some other core things that you've changed
Over the years?
yourself over the year? What would you say?
Oh, I went from being very pessimistic to being actually very optimistic. When I was in high school, I was a fairly depressive guy. I saw the world quite as a dark place. I thought that, I've not signed up for this, and I gotta go and get a job and go to university and work for the weekends and for the vacations and things like that. And I was very unhappy about that. So that has very much changed. I now see it very differently. I am very happy in the place I'm at, and I'm actually really happy to be alive and living this life fully and being able to give all the things that I can give to the people around me.
Okay, so how did you go about that? What was the process? Because I presume it wasn't just an overnight.
No, it wasn't.
transition.
After high school, I went to a retreat center in California to do martial arts. And you can imagine it's a retreat center, so it's like a monastery, but there's no religious background in it. But the training itself, you are isolated, so you are on a hill with we're 6 people there in total with one master, training from 6 in the morning till 7 in the evening, then eating dinner. And so from being very stuck in my head and thinking a lot about things and analyzing things, I went to feeling more the body and being less thinking and just trying things out. And it was at the beginning fairly challenging because I was very precise. I also played the cello before, so I was like, every move that you play with the finger, if it's a little off, it's going to sound different. It sounds off. It sounds horrible. So you have to be very precise with things. Same with the thinking. And so when I first started with martial arts, I was like, well, is the arm here or is the arm here? And I was like, well, it's just here. He couldn't really say that. It wasn't as much as precise necessarily. And so it got quite got a hang on me first of how do I practice this? How do I practice this move? And I just start to try it out, and eventually I start to get a feel for it. But first I want to try to understand it intellectually, and that didn't quite work. You cannot understand intellectually the moves, you have to feel them. So that was the first start that got me out of that kind of thinking. And then when I came back from California to Switzerland, I started to learn hypnosis. I started to study hypnosis, and I did a lot of self-work, read a lot of books. Well, actually books are more recent. Before I did more seminars and learned about hypnosis and got hypnotized or got coached, and that has made, I think, the transition fully to being more positive and also realizing I can have a niche in society that suits me, right? And that I am fulfilled and I can create that in the way that I want to have it. So yeah, that has been kind of the transition.
Okay, so for someone who's listening, who can relate to being in a really pessimistic, cynical place, negative headspace, and wants to get out of that, how can you practically help them? What are some simple ABC steps that they could do theoretically at the end of this webinar, that they could look on maybe the next month, 2 months, 3 months? What are some real basic mindsets or techniques?
Well, some basic thing is I do believe that exercise can actually really help. Because when you do exercise, I mean, there's studies that show that when you exercise that there's certain hormones and stuff being released that naturally make you more happy. So, and it connects you more to your body. And one thing I've realized, at least for me, I cannot say necessarily it was for everyone who is this way, but with the people I've seen and with me, it's more that I was too stuck in the head. I believed my thoughts. I gave them too much credibility. I thought this is how the world is. This is reality. And then I started to realize, well, wait a second, reality is not this. Reality is plastic, right? I'm not saying the pessimistic view that I had is wrong. I'm not saying the optimistic view I'm having right now is right. They both, right? You can look at it, but where are you focusing on? Is it on the pessimistic side or on the positive side? So exercise is definitely something I can highly recommend for someone, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes a day, because it will help you more to reconnect with your body and get kind of those things going. Now, the other thing I can recommend, if you really want to more shift that, but that has to be in place that you actually want to shift out of that place, is that you have a rubber band around your wrist, and every time you have a negative thought, you kind of take it and you let it hit your wrist, and you go to a positive thing, something you experience, something positive. And that will start to retrain your brain, because I have trained myself very, very well, and I can go back to that. It's still there. I have trained myself very well to see things and see flaws and see what's not good, right? So it is like a muscle I've trained myself. So if you think about it that way, you can train the muscle in a different way, and you see more positive things. And the question ultimately for me is, which one is going to be more useful for you? I'm not saying, all the positive thinking or whatever, it's great. What is actually more suitable for me? Is it being more positive, or is it being more negative? And for me right now, it's the positive. But I still can go and look at what could be improved here, what's not so good here. And so having that kind of mental flexibility I find very useful. So those are 2 exercises that come to mind right away that I think are very practical and can be implemented. The next thing that I find useful is the work from Byron Katie. You can put that in Google, Byron Katie, B-Y-R-O-N, and Katie, K-A-T-I-E. She's done a lot of good work and has developed quite a simple system that helps you to actually see that our reality is a projection. We make sense out of the world. It's like we say in NLP, it's a map of the reality. It's not reality itself. So doing this kind of work and actually questioning your thoughts, if they're actually true, has helped me also quite a bit, and I think is also very practical for people to apply. Because once you see that, oh, wait a second, it's actually just a brain fart. It's nothing real. It makes it less daunting.
Brain fluid, brain farts.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I think the real key thing, and so fundamental, is for people to come to the understanding that they have the choice. It sounds like they have the choice what they want their reality to be, and that reality by nature is, you said, plastic. Yeah, it's malleable. It's what we want to create, and we get so stuck in our ways, don't we? We think this is the only way.
Yeah.
And especially we're so identified with thoughts as kind of the gospel, like the Holy Grail. Well, if I thought it, then it must be true. And if we're in that place, which is definitely a place I was in a lot more a few years ago, it can be really quite a frightening world, because you're just almost at the whim of your inner thinking. And if your inner thinking is in a bit of a negative space, then everything's negative, and it doesn't appear like you've got any way out.
Yeah.
So you went to the martial arts school, and that got you more in touch with your body. So that's a key. you said, getting out of your head, actually just feeling the body. Again, really simple stuff, right? But
It is
really.
Yeah, it is very simple.
The thing is, all these things are so bloody simple, but we don't do them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So getting in the body, being aware that you have the choice to choose what you want your reality to be, and training the new muscles, so new neural pathways are built.
Yeah, and also, I mean, something very easy is also actually go and seek professional help, you know, with a coach. Or I've taken coaching. I'm still taking coaching because I've seen the benefit of it. Or I've gone to a Greenberg massage therapist. She's done absolutely beautiful work, and it's very different. Well, there's also coaching involved in that element, but she's working a lot with the body, so you can't escape in your head. So that's something very practical. As you said, you know, well, you know, we're telling those people those things, but are you actually going to do it? Because if you don't do it, you're not going to get any benefit. And so for me, that is the easiest way. If I go actually with someone to see someone, and I work with them, because then it's regular, and someone else is, put some light on the blind spots I have.
Yeah.
So that is something also very easy that you can do, that I can recommend to people, because you just gain a lot.
I heard there's an amazing hypnotist in Switzerland that solves all problems.
Right.
And you mentioned Byron Katie's stuff, which I love as well. I think we've talked about her a few times.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've done it over the webinar, but definitely in person. And funny enough, today I was with a client, and I used some of Byron Katie's questioning. It's a model that I just use really often because it just works so well. And maybe we could even go through that today as it's come up. But what the client had was a belief that the thought that we were investigating, the root heavy thought, was that she was belonging to someone else actually, and was kind of stuck in the situation. And by the end of the process, when we're actually questioning the thought, is this an absolute truth? How do you feel when you experience this thought in the body? How would you feel theoretically if you didn't attach to that thought? Would your actions change? You know, is there a positive reason to keep hold of this thought? After going through these questions, she was actually just laughing. She was in hysterics. But at the beginning, she was really scared. She was like, "Oh my God, I'm so scared. That's in my head. Oh my God, where the hell did that come from?" And about 20 minutes later, she was like, "Oh my God, that's so funny. That's what I was buying into as concrete reality." So it just went to show me again today, like, wow, the power of just investigating thoughts. So I'm just thinking, as it's come up, is there a way we can maybe make it more easy to explain to people listening to this or who watch this, how they can get started with their own investigation? Maybe we can explain some of Byron Katie's work, or do a demonstration or something.
Sure. Got to think a little bit.
You're on the spot.
So the first thing that I find very useful is that actually, so let's assume I'm a very clean person, and there are people who are not clean, and someone comes into my room and they put a whole bunch of garbage everywhere. And as a clean person, I can become upset and be like, "Oh, you know, why did you do that?" And I can get angry at the person. And as I'm getting upset, another person might react differently. They might get sad. They're like, "Oh, why are you hurting me? Oh, it hurts so much. You don't love me," right? Another person, they kind of act neutral. And so there's all kinds of different reactions to that same situation. So the situation is the same, but how I'm making sense out of the situation in my head is different, right? And depending on how I'm making sense of that situation, I have a different kind of reaction, emotional response to it. So with the work, we actually look at how are we making sense. What is it that we're actually believing in? I don't have right now something that just comes to mind that we could give as an example. If it comes up, I'll let you know. But I can give an example from the past that I have investigated in to see what is the truth for me. And one very important thing that I feel is a little bit missing in the general explanation of Byron Katie's work is that you need some kind of silence. You need to be ready to really sit with it. So, for example, I had a belief that my wife is not supposed to nag me, right? Sometimes we would get like a little bit in our hair or whatever, and she would want me to clean up or something like that, and I would get annoyed at her because she wants me to do this stuff. And so, you know.
Before you continue,
Yeah.
is there a way that I could just take that? I know you've already worked through it, but is there a way I could just ask you some questions about that to demonstrate?
Sure, yeah. Let's go. Let's just play with it.
Anything else? Then do that, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so the thought is, the assumption that you've found linked to your heaviness is my wife shouldn't nag me.
Yeah, exactly. Should
Okay.
just leave me alone.
So let's just investigate that thought, that bit of brain fluid. We're not looking to disprove it or prove it or judge it as right or wrong, but we're just going to get curious about it, ask some questions, and just answer honestly. So, first question. Is that an absolute truth?
No.
Like gravity is pulling down, you know, this, you see this sock? Gravity's pulling down. It's not an absolute truth.
Yeah. And so what is happening now inside of me is, and that's something I keep observing, is that when you ask me questions, is it an absolute truth? My mind either goes into the direction of, no, it's not true, and justifies it. No, it's not true because, you know, she can do her own thing, and if something's bothering her, she should say it, and all this kind of stuff. It could also go in the other direction of, yes, it is true, because I have my own space, my own privacy, and this kind of things. And what I've realized, those two poles that are there, neither of them is useful for me.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
It is more a feeling inside that I get of like, no, this is actually not true. So it's not just an intellectualization, which a lot of people do, but it's actually more a deeper feeling inside of me and like, no, this is actually not true. And sometimes for me, it takes a while, so I would go off and be like, yes, it's true, right? Or no, it's not true, and we will go off into those directions. And I will come back, and I absolutely know this is true. And then it goes off again, and I come back. It goes off again, and I come back, till I actually get the answer from more deeper inside.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so how did you react, or let's pretend you still got this thought, you attached to this thought, you know. How do you react when you attach to this thought as reality? What happens internally? How do you feel emotionally?
Well, it is not very nice for me to believe that thought, because if I believe the thought that my wife isn't
Oh, so you just cut out for 10 seconds.
not supposed to, feeling like I'm actually like getting into a fight with her, right? So if I believe that thought, I myself get unhappy.
Okay.
And I am resisting my wife, and I'm not actually looking for a solution, because that's it. She's not supposed to do that, so I'm going to try everything to stop that.
Okay. So you feel not feeling good, feeling kind of tight or heavy, or
Yeah, definitely not good. It's irritating.
okay. Theoretically, if you didn't attach to that thought as the reality, you just didn't attach to it. Can you simulate the experience of how you'd feel? Really tune into it. Close your eyes if you need to. How would you feel without that thought?
How would I feel without that thought? Well, free. I would feel a lot freer, because I can actually take into account what she's saying. I can actually be with her and what she's saying and figure something out that works for both of them. And personally, emotionally, it is not, there's no resistance going on, right? So it's saying something's coming my way, and before I would say, oh, it's nagging, and now I'm like, okay, there's something that I need to communicate. It's a communication much more. Before there was the nagging as a label attached, right? So if I detach from that, so much better.
Okay, and would your actions be any different because of that? Would your behaviors or actions be any different when you don't attach to that thought?
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't be resisting, I wouldn't be fighting. I actually would be sitting and listening and taking it into account and then giving my point of view. Right? So it is a collaboration instead of against each other.
Okay, so is there a positive reason to keep hold of the thought?
No, not really.
It doesn't serve anything?
No, I thought before, it's serving me as it is preserving my own space,
Yeah.
right? But if it's a collaboration and I still give my point of view, it is still preserving that space, so there's no point of keeping
Okay, so
that.
you can get the benefit of having your own space without that thought still.
Exactly.
Okay, so is there any reason to drop the thought?
Yeah, I feel a lot better and happier and less stressed.
Okay, so does that thought serve your true essence?
No.
Okay, and last question I've got for you then is, are there any alternative thinking available to that thought, that bit of brain fluid of my wife should not nag me? Is there any other alternatives?
Yeah, I mean, my wife can say whatever she wants. If something's bothering her, I'm actually very happy she tells me, because then we can do something about it. If she doesn't tell me, then it's going to be somewhere in the background. And we're both adults who can take life on, take each other on in a healthy way, not in a fighting way. So that's for me the alternative, that we're both. I don't know the English word, but basically that you're self-reliant as a person.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So does that thought feel any less of a reality now? Or
Well, I worked before through it, but I know the effect is there. I mean, I have worked through it, and the effect is there, and going through that again, it's so obvious. I mean, it is funny to look back at that and thinking, wow, I was so irritated. And I could so get angry at that just because I believed that she's not supposed to do that. Yeah, it's very, very rigid. There's no flexibility.
This is the absolute truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. So yeah, I hope that gives people watching more of a pragmatic understanding of how you can break down your own thoughts. And for the guys on the webinar, you can maybe think about your own heavy thoughts that cause you annoyance and get them out there under a little microscope of awareness and start questioning them. We've just got a question. Can you go through the alternatives to my wife shouldn't nag me? So any more alternatives?
Well, I mean, I can go through the classic turnaround patterns that Katie is suggesting of my wife shouldn't nag me to my wife should nag me, right?
Alternative, yeah.
As an alternative. And again, if I'm not attached to that is actually true, because if the nagging or comes about that something is not right. So yes, that's what I said before. Bring that out, because then we can handle it. We can do something about it.
Other alternatives. I love my wife's feedback.
Yeah.
Everything is a beautiful learning lesson. If I'm triggered, then it's something I can learn about myself. I'm grateful for this triggering.
Well, and everything is information.
Yeah.
Right? Because the nagging is a label that has certain emotional connotation. If I say it's information, it is actually true. It's information about how she's doing, where she's at, and what is bothering her or not bothering her. And it's more neutral, right? So everything my wife says is information for me instead of nagging.
And when we're getting triggered by it, it's not that it's the other person that's actually causing something. It's something within ourselves that's getting pushed.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm sure everyone knows that. You say something and someone gets really angry, right? And you're like, what did I do? Like, did I do something wrong? And you think you were the one who did it, but it is really not you. It's the way we are making sense of the world through our filters, and it might be that we had a bad experience with those words or with this kind of tone. So yeah.
And this is why, people who trigger us the most can actually be our biggest blessings.
Yes.
They're just helping us get all the dirt to the surface and actually face, right, I've got this insecurity here, this triggers me here, this annoys me here, okay, I've got this pattern here. And that you're only going to get over them if you get them triggered in the first place, to work through them, understand, investigate them. So they're actually blessings.
Yes, absolutely. And that's how I see it now. When I get triggered, when I get emotional response, I'm like, yes, fantastic, let's go for it. Let's look at
having a breakdown.
Yeah.
Beautiful. The guys listening in, have you got any questions at this point for Yakin about his own journey and his own journey from pessimism to optimism and just the things we've been speaking about? Any questions? Or about any other topic? The suspense is killing us, William. Okay. We'll carry on then.
Natasha's written something. How can you bring such a specific topic, example wife, to more generalized people should not judge me, for example? Well, I personally believe that it is more useful when you are specific with something, because once you're specific, you can it's just easier to take care of them. When it's people, there's so much inside in people. When you actually are specific and you look at one example from there, then kind of the unconscious mind can generalize from that experience. And maybe you have to go back with another person that's maybe doing the same thing, but eventually you're like, oh, I get it. But I wouldn't recommend to actually go broad right from the beginning. Trying to kill 100 birds with one stone or whatever. Go specific first, because there's the emotional attachment, and then from there you will naturally learn to broaden it. Or with the person who triggers you the most. Yeah, go with the person who triggers you the most. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the biggest blessings. Beautiful. So, Yakin, I've got another question for you. I want to know, what has one of your biggest challenges been in your journey so far of, well, we'll just call it life. What's one of your biggest challenges been, and how have you come through that?
I have never really classified into like, I've never thought about it like this is the biggest challenge I've had. I can tell you about some challenges that I had that definitely have impacted me and that I've worked through. And one of them was the suicide of my father, which when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And for a long time I felt like I was being pushed into the direction of suffering. Like, I remember the scene of being by the grave as a little boy, and a friend of my mother, she talked to my mother and said, "Why is he not crying?" I was not crying at the grave, and she was like kind of like implying I was supposed to cry. So I always felt like I'm being pushed into this kind of suffering way of like, yes, I have to be like a certain way because he has died. And that kind of led me, I believe, that's not the backwards rationalization, that I emotionally cut a little bit off from myself, right? And so through the self-work I've reconnected through that, I have appropriately processed the death of my father, which was not going into suffering and thinking like, oh my God. Yes, going through the emotions of being sad, of being angry, of being upset, but in the end actually coming out at the end of love, actually feeling love for the whole thing, which I find is actually a very healthy place to be in, and it's fully emotionally connected, and not what I did before, which was like kind of just go into the head and be like rationalizing about it and saying, well, it's his life, he had his choice and stuff, and I still actually say that, but it's coming from a very different place emotionally. So that was definitely a challenge for me, and I guess the way I solved it is actually seeing someone, right? And the massage therapist I mentioned to you, Greenberg method, she really helped me to connect with that and release those emotions that were pent up in there. And the funny thing is that we sometimes look at those events as something that is bad, wasn't supposed to happen, or it's in my case, I felt like I was being identified with it. So everyone would bring that up, like, oh, this is so horrible. Now I felt like I was always reduced to that. And now I see it actually as a great strength, because there's a lot of value to having gone through disconnecting, having gone through feeling like I was being pushed in a certain direction of more suffering, to actually connecting and going through the emotions and coming out at the place of love has benefited me greatly, and makes my life rich. And I don't know how to say it, but when you go through those things, it enriches your life greatly. So that was definitely a big challenge. Another challenge was actually that kind of pessimistic worldview I had, and managing to pull myself out of it, having the courage to leave for California and training like a madman. And I don't know how I did that. I cannot answer how I did it. There was just something in me that wanted to go there, and I had to go there, and I just did it. Like, there was no question about it. And yes, there were hard times, because I left my girlfriend from high school, which I was almost together for almost 4 years. And I left her, was like, I'm going to go for that program. And so I definitely had also there quite some tough times, missing her, for example, thinking, am I crazy, just being here and training all day. But there was just that deeper place inside of me that knew this was the right thing. And then also leaving that place was a great challenge. So I feel like some inner, maybe my unconscious mind or whatever, but I have some very good guidance in that regard. I feel that when I listen to that voice, it actually helps me a lot. And it's not just with myself and my journey, it's also when I'm coaching people, when I'm working with people with hypnosis or whatever it is. That inner voice, that inner intuition has always really served me.
Okay, thank you for sharing. It's given me a few ideas for some questions. Has anyone got any questions before I ask?
No, no, there's something I'd like to share though. I mean, part of the dealing with being pessimistic and having a new outlook in life is getting rid of the stress. When you can get rid of the stress in your life or reduce it, then you think a lot more positively.
Yes.
You tend to be a lot more pessimistic when things are, growing on you and things aren't going well and the stress increases, etc., etc. And when you're in that vicious cycle of stress, sometimes you just got to take a step back, say, look, I've got to break the stress first before you can do anything else.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, that makes sense.
Yeah, I've been there, I've been on that journey, and I'm now at the end of that journey a lot less stressful, even though I'm still at work at almost 10 o'clock.
And William, do you mind sharing how you practically, some of the steps you took to reduce that level of stress, that whirlwind of pressure?
I deal with things head on. When there are people who are causing me stress at work, then I'll deal with them head on and say, look, you've got to change the way you're working because it's not agreeing with the way I'm working. And I open a dialogue with that person. And more often than not, we'll come to a compromise as to how things are going to work. But when people are not working how they should be, I don't sit and bear it. And I don't carry people anymore.
Okay, so you're not speaking the truth.
It sounds a bit rough. It sounds a bit, how would you say, ruthless or whatever. But when you're not ruthless, then people will take advantage. And I don't mean be ruthless in a nasty way or with any malice, but just to be straightforward and say, like, what you're doing isn't right, and to work with that to reduce the things that are wrong that are causing you stress. And that's what I've done.
Cheers, William. Have you had any experience that Yakin with the fine line of being, they're all different words and they can all have different meanings for different people, but ruthless in an aggressive way, but then having that strong, firm but fair attitude, but then also having the kind of pushover, being taken advantage. There's real fine lines, aren't there, between standing your ground but then not making that become part of the ego where you have to fight for everything, but then at the same time you're still acting with integrity and not being taken advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, I feel there's the line, or what makes it easier is when you're not attached anymore to feeling like someone is wanting to take advantage of you, because that puts you right away into a defensive position.
Yeah.
And will bring up anger, because that will kind of reestablish the boundary. If you're coming from a place of, this is what I want, this is how I'm showing up in the world, and those are the things that I value, then I can communicate that without being angry and being going for the person, trying to beat them up and showing that I'm right. It's just the way I'm doing business, for example, and you either agree with it and we can do something, or you disagree with it and you're free to leave. Obviously, I'm in that position because I'm self-employed and I see people and see clients, and I can say that in other situations there might be, you might have to find a mutual ground so that at least the work environment is good. Because I do believe that everyone wants to work in an environment that is supportive and that you like to go to, because you're going to spend 8 to 9 or more hours at that workplace, right? But I think that is probably a core thing. If you're not attached to thinking someone's going to take advantage of me, will make a huge, huge difference in how you actually are communicating with the other people.
I like that. Then you're not on the defensive straight away, because if you come from that standpoint of, shit, I've got to protect and stand my ground, and if you have that too much, then you're kind of just setting yourself up for battles that maybe you can just avoid by just not needing to
yeah, exactly.
try.
And I mean, it's completely fine to be triggered, because when you feel like you're getting emotional, you're getting angry, then there's maybe something that you want to look at and that you can work through, maybe with the work of Byron Katie, which is a very easy tool to use, or whatever else. Because and then you will naturally find that place where it is really a resonant thing that you're communicating, and not necessarily a very angry place. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
No, it's definitely something I'm continuing to work on, is getting that balance of really being firm and having full congruency with what I want, actually, and being unapologetic about it. But yeah, without getting the ego involved, that you have to have a certain way, and you're attached to things, and they're dishonoring you, and all this kind of stuff really gets the mind really in a heavy place.
Yeah, I think what serves me the most is really that idea that we can try on a belief, like I can try on this sweatshirt, and I can look in the mirror and I'm like, do I like it? Yeah, I like it. Okay, I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna carry it and wear it. Or I don't like it and I'll put it away and I take something else. And that's with beliefs as well. We have beliefs. That's something natural to have. But is that belief serving me right now? Is it serving me to think, oh, someone is dishonoring me? Is it actually serving me deep down for what I want to have in life? And if the answer is no, I'm going to drop that belief. And I'm going to see if there's a different belief that maybe takes care and substitutes that what I thought the other belief will give me. Because there's always a payoff, right? So if that is kind of taken care of and integrated in the new belief, and it's a better way of showing up in the world, then that's the belief I will take. I hope that's not too abstract.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, choosing beliefs that serve us. I'm just reading what Natty's written here. She says, finding a solution in a bigger pie instead of splitting the pie. Nice. I was with a a client recently, and they were late for the appointment by quite a bit, and that was a scenario where in the past my ego would have kicked in much more and would have been like, oh, this is like disrespectful, this is this and that, and they shouldn't be this and should be all that. Whereas now my response was just, oh, it's important for me just to clarify that, if certain things aren't on time, then this is what happens, and that's just how it happens. And it's important for me to say that and not be scared to say that, which again was used to be a big challenge for me to say things like that. But then at the same time, I don't have to emotionally go, yeah, you bastard, you should be, because that's not serving me. So it's really having that non-attachment to, oh, you're late. Sorry, we can't do the session if you're late. But there's no emotional sting. It's like we just can't do it because that's how I go. And yeah, that was a good example of that balance.
Yeah. Plus, also the thing is sometimes we're like, oh, we're hurting the other person. We're afraid of hurting the other person. But at the same time, when you say something like that, you're late for the session, so we can't have the session, you're also giving the possibility to the person that they can grow with that experience. When you're withholding yourself because you're mind reading the other person, trying to be like, oh yes, what's right for that person, can I say that, can I not say that, and micromanaging it, you also are taking away options and possibilities for that person to grow. And so in the end, I feel, and you might be off in the first place anyways, that you think, oh, I'm going to hurt this person, and then you say it, and afterwards the person might turn around and be like, well, that was the best thing that you could have said to me, right? So that's also something very important I find to learn, is that what I have and what I have to say is important or completely unimportant. I don't know, but I can say it because that's what is actually true for me right now. And then what the other person does with it, well, that's their business.
That's the key thing, business.
Yeah.
Keeping in our own business.
Yeah.
Just had another beautiful question, actually, from Matty. Where does your courage come from?
Oh, man. Where does my courage come
from? I'll let you answer that one first.
As said, I think that's just the kind of inner voice, that kind of inner, not even voice, it's just the inner being that is driving me, and I don't know exactly where it is coming from. It is more and more apparent to me that a life worth living for me is a life where I'm true to myself and I'm going for what I want to do in this life, and it's not compromising myself to institutions or think people say this is good for you, but I don't really feel it. And it's just that kind of longing for that and being true to myself that has given me the courage. And sometimes I lose that. Sometimes I go off into directions, and maybe I'm a chicken or whatever, and it's just fine. Get back on the horse. So that's kind of the way I do it. But I don't think I can answer that question fully.
And when you speak about your inner guidance, your inner wisdom, how can someone who's listening get more awareness of that themselves if they're a bit like, what the hell does that mean? What are you talking about, mate? You taking LSD again?
It is, and that's the thing, it is not an intellectual thing. So it is not found by thinking about it. Because that's what we do a lot. We're like, well, is this good? Is this bad? And we kind of get trapped in our head. And what that can lead to is that we almost kind of paralyze what's going on actually inside of us in our body. And the body has a lot of wisdom. As you said, I like that, the inner wisdom. The inner wisdom of the body. And that's the inner guidance. It's coming from the body. It's not coming from here. Felt, it's here. Right? And so how can you kind of like connect more to that? Is by getting out of your head. Get connected more with your body. And as I said, for example, exercise is good. Mindfulness is something good. Right? The work is something good because you start to question the beliefs, and you start to drop out of this kind of thinking, start actually also feeling what's going on inside of you. Meditation. Meditation is a very good one as well, because as soon as there is more silence, you can actually feel more. Right? What you suggested in several webinars, I believe, is having a purposeless day, going off. For me, it's no electronics, no books. Yeah, pretty much no distraction in any kind of form like that, and no plan. So it's just me, and I go and be. And what happens is, at least towards the end of the day, there's more space. Right? When there's more space, there actually things can come up, things can present themselves. When there's always a mindless, always chatter, and things to do and go to, and stress like that, there's no space for it, for anything to come up. And so walks in nature are sometimes beautiful, or just being by myself, sitting on a chair, staring off into the distance, letting this thing just going on, not even trying to control it, just letting it go on. And suddenly there's things that just fall into place and ideas that come up. So that also kind of more connects with the body over time.
And it's something that's improved over time, over continuous practice.
Yes. Well, it's improved the more we realize we don't need that kind of mindless chatter, right? So it's, for me, it's less actually practicing connecting with the body. It's actually much more letting go of certain things, of certain habits that keep me away from it.
And what would you say to people who... Sorry, were you going to say something?
Please, no, go ahead.
What would you say to people who are heavily identified with their thoughts as who they are, and are like, no, I ain't giving that up. No.
Well, welcome to the club. I was also very heavily identified with that, and part of the problem was that I wouldn't say was, I probably still am to a certain degree smart, and I used to be very good at debating and things like that, and so I had quite a lot of fun taking people on and their ideas, and showing that I can outsmart them or something like that. So there was definitely like a payoff for me of like having this kind of identification. And for me, it was a process of realizing that this is not suiting me, right? It is not suiting me to identify with that and trying to prove always that I'm right and this is the way it is. But that's something that comes through experience, I feel. As you said, you bump your head against the wall enough times and you realize, well, I don't actually need to bump my head. So, but it has to come with something, like with an openness, with that wanting to go somewhere, to develop yourself, I feel. That's for me. I have the desire to develop myself, and when that openness is there and I'm like, well, I'm going wherever it takes, whatever it takes, because I want to lead a happy life, then that kind of can happen, that you can start to actually see, oh, wait a second, that might not be serving me to think that all this stuff is true that I'm thinking, and that it's me.
I was reading a book recently called The Truth Is, I believe, and I was just reading it and kind of sitting in the park, and it just dawned on me how liberating it is to give up thoughts. It just sounds so simple, but I had this massive, just complete stillness of no mind when I just realized, oh, what would happen if I literally just gave up thoughts, the phenomena of thoughts now? Would the whole world stop? Would I suddenly faint? And I just kind of went with it, and it's just like, nothing's happening. This is amazing, and that's just it's kind of like what my reality is. Like a lot of the time now, I'd literally just be like, okay, nothing's going on. I'm experiencing everything. Where's the voice gone? And it's just so liberating to give up that attachment to the thinker.
Yeah, and I actually like this example that you just said, because it is something that I sometimes still get identified with thoughts. It's not like I'm walking around completely de-identified. So it is a process that's going on. But the more you realize, actually, it's just very good without it, the more it just becomes a natural part of how you are.
Definitely. We've just got another great question. These questions, Natty. Okay. Having a lot of space suddenly can actually be scary. Yeah, I'm cool with that. because we are so used to doing, what are some easier ways to introduce, I guess, in smaller, maybe more gradual chunks, having more space, so you don't get overwhelmed with space?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can just take an hour and have a purposeless hour or 2 hours, right? I personally think a day is not too much, because like going for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month or whatever without any purpose. So there is something coming the next day, or for example, you see at the evening I have this appointment, but all the rest of the day I just am in a way. So there's that knowing inside. I'm not just completely kind of lost, right? So that might be useful.
You just ease in. See, I guess you just feel where you're at. Like when
Yeah.
I'm with clients and they start off on the meditation side of things. For example, today, she's just going to start off the process. She's just going to do 3 minutes a day of observing thoughts, and 3 minutes, and just build up and up. So I guess wherever you're at now is the perfect stage, and you just introduce more until you get to half an hour, 2 hours, until you can go to like a 60-day Vipassana retreat.
Yeah. Are there any more questions from the other people before we start wrapping it up? Because it's almost 10.
Any more on the Lokanati? Brilliant. Well, let me try let us both, because you're always better at this than I am, because I just forget. Concluding, summarising some of the key things we looked at today. So you spoke about your transition from pessimism to optimism. We've said a few times, get in the body, do some exercise, simple things, feel your feet on the ground, do some yoga, get in the body. Train your mind simply to start with the elastic band, for example, to start doing things in a more positive way, not because that's a more correct way, but because you know you have the choice. So why not make the reality more comfortable? We talked about Byron Katie, about the power of investigating thoughts, of stepping back and actually questioning, oh, is this concrete reality? Is this absolute, or is there some alternative that I'm missing, and I'm just so deep in it that I can't see from this perspective?
And with that as well, also silence, having the kind of silence with the investigation, being willing to ask several times, kind of burning out that stuff going on, finding more the truth inside.
Yeah, listening to the inner guidance, the inner wisdom. People might call it the gut feeling, the heart, the soul, the awareness. All different words, right? But I think most human beings can relate to some sort of feeling that is outside of the mental machine. Other than that, I'm sure there are some other beautiful golden nuggets. Other than that, mate, I'd just like to say a big thank you for sharing what you've shared.
Thank you for asking the questions. And also thank you, Natty, for asking questions, and William for sharing his perspective, which I very much agree. The stress, it's the same thing with it we just discussed again with the space, right? And when we have space, things can actually fall in place. That rhymes.
Next time, we're going to do a rap battle.
Yeah, you're going to win that one. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I guess we've got to wrap up because it's come to the time.
Yeah, I just want to ask you a question, Sam. Where can people find you if they have any kind of questions to you, or do you have anything coming up that people can join? Like, I know you do a lot of workshops and seminars, I think. Also one-on-one stuff. So can you just share a few things about that?
Yeah, good question. So my website is transcendthemind.com. I'll write it in the chat box after. Email address sam@transcendthemind.com. And in terms of upcoming events, yeah, there's always stuff going on in London. There's one space left on a 5-day retreat that I'm doing in Lincolnshire.
Oh, fantastic.
To the 17th of July, so that is going to be awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, that's like the best thing in the world. Yeah, other than that, just have a look at the website, check out the events calendar. There's one-on-one stuff, there's improvisation classes, there's meditation classes, there's mind mastery classes. There you go.
Fantastic.
All right, lovely. And I look forward to speaking to you in a couple of weeks.
No, in a couple of weeks we want to speak to someone else because I'm going to be flying from London back in during that time period that we're supposed to be on the call.
Well, I'm cheating on you.
Yes, you're cheating on me.
I'm gonna cheat. Wicked.
Well, thank you all very much for coming online today.
Yeah, thank you all guys for being here. Hope you got something useful.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.